Hello and welcome to a near year-end edition of the Hauger History Podcast. This is episode 54 and a brief look at the history of Memorial Day and how it's celebrated in the United States of America and why we remember this day, why it is observed on all of our calendars. I'm Mr. Hauger and thanks for joining us on this episode. According to the Office of Public and Intergovernment Affairs, the U.S. Department of Veterans, Memorial Day began officially 3 years after the Civil War ended on May 5th, 1868, with the head of an organization of Union veterans, the Grand Army of the Republic, or the GAR. They established Decoration Day, a time for the nation to decorate the graves of the war dead with flowers. Major General John A. Logan declared that Decoration Day should be observed on May 30th, and it's widely believed that May 30th is the date chosen because that is a time when all of the flowers around the country would be in bloom. The first large observance was held later that year at Arlington National Cemetery across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. The ceremony centered around the mourning draped veranda of the Arlington Mansion, once the home of General Robert E. Lee. Lots of government officials made speeches, including children from the Soldiers and Sailors Orphan Home, and members of the GAR made their way through the cemetery, adorning graves and strewing flowers on Union and Confederate graves. In 8th grade this year, one of the conversations that we had was why, posing this question to students, do you think when the North was victorious in the war that there was no celebration, there were not a lot of parades, and there was to be no gloating, that there was to be no real pomp and circumstance surrounding the victory? And that's because the victory is that the nation stood together, but the losses on Confederate and Union sides are still felt generations later for the brutal way in which people fought, the terrible course of events of disease and cold and hardships and families against families that once tore our nation near apart. Now, the official birthplace was declared in 1966 when President Lyndon Johnson and the Congress agreed that Waterloo, New York was the birthplace of Memorial Day. Businesses closed, residents flew flags at half-staff, and by the end of the 19th century, Memorial Day ceremonies were being held on May 30 throughout the nation. States had passed regulations and proclamations observing the day, and it was declared a national holiday in 1971, though some people still call it Decoration Day. Now, there are observances that vary around the nation, but the national moment, which you might not know of remembrance, encourages all Americans to pause wherever they are at 3 p.m. local time on Memorial Day for a minute of silence to remember and honor those who have died in service to the nation. As Moment of Remembrance founder Carmela Laspada states, it's a way we all can help put the memorial back in Memorial Day. So there's some information that you might not know. You may be headed to cemeteries or memorials, holding family gatherings, participating in parades, or just enjoying what is a holiday. We have less holidays in the United States than many other countries. However you celebrate it, I hope this will bring you a little bit more of an understanding of Declaration Day and now Memorial Day and how it has been memorialized across the nation. Red poppies are often brought by the VFW and many others, and we'll have that moment of remembrance at 3 p.m. local time. And that resolution was passed December 2000, so that's only a 17-year tradition. As for now, this Hauger History Podcast is over. You can tweet us your episode requests from 6th grade to 8th grade social studies topics at Hauger History on Twitter. You can visit us at haugerhistory.podbean.com. Thank you, Podbean, for the bandwidth. And you can subscribe on iTunes or on YouTube at Danny Hauger. I thank you so much for listening. I hope you've learned a lot with us this year. And stay with us. There's a lot more to come this summer and beyond. This is Mr. Hauger saying push in your chairs, and we will see you on the next edition of the Hauger History Podcast. Thank you for listening and watching, everybody.